Welcome back to Let's Talk Tuesday. This is the podcast where we have real conversations about learning, leadership, and what it truly takes to help people and organizations grow. Each week, we bring together different perspectives, experiences, and voices to explore what learning development really means, why it matters, and how we can do it better. Today we have a very special guest, Nickolas Natali from LA, who has a decade of experience as an expert in marketing and entrepreneurship. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Stoked to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you today. Tell us a bit about your background and what your current focus is today.
My background, to keep it short and sweet, is I went to school for software engineering, worked as a software engineer and software project manager for the Department of Defense for 4 years, quit that job, and I'm sure as many entrepreneurs can relate, I have a very large graveyard of things that didn't pan out as my aspiring visions wanted them to, from starting a web development agency to selling UGC content to now, which is what I currently do, is a marketing agency where we prioritize on paid ads and we also help with content and pairing those two worlds together so that businesses can get an ROI of what they're trying to sell.
Amazing. I love that. And I definitely can relate my entrepreneur brain. What does learning and development mean in your world?
In my world, the agency side of things, I would say that it means training your team efficiently and well. So, as a business owner, this is something that we all have to do, but agency owners specifically, I feel like maybe that's just because I'm living it, is there's pillars that have to be learned in the business. And whether we like it or not, the business owner has to learn all of those systems and skill sets so they can build those systems. And then they have to pass that over to the team. And the team being able to learn, in my experience, requires very granular steps. Obviously, the better the talent that you hire, the more you can chunk things up and generalize them. But in most cases, it means knowing the nitty-gritty of each of these things. So the sales process needs a really tight script. What do you want them to say? How do you want them to say it? When do you want them to say it? Or even an onboarding process where what do you want them to do first? Do you want your customer success manager to check if they paid, check if the agreement is signed, step, 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 step? And I think that portion of learning comes out in the SOPs we create and then how we pass those on to the rest of the team.
Yeah, so it's really a true story. As an entrepreneur, right, you wear all the hats at first. And so as you scale, it's having that clear vision and very organized way of bringing it to each function or person or whatever the case may be to ensure it's done to the level of quality that you would expect.
Absolutely. And while also keeping in mind your team might learn in different ways than you, which is also some of a roadblock. So having a visual component to your SOP with like a video and maybe a written version, and then also you might have to follow up and actually hold their hands to implement something. People are quite complex, and knowing how different people tick in your organization is important to get the best outcomes, exactly like you're saying, like ensuring quality is there.
Yeah, and in my world, we call it multimodality. So the more ways that it hits the senses, whereas people all have a preferred way of learning, the more you can hit, the better people are going to be able to retain it, the better people are going to be able to actually action what they've learned and practice it. And so I love that. It's a great reminder for everyone to think about not just one way, but how can you attack it from multiple views and lenses, because ultimately that will be more inclusive that different types of people can learn it, but also as one individual, even if I have a preference, if I'm learning it four different ways, it's going to, some way, it's going to stick.
Yeah, and how much more of an expert will you be if you learn to explain it in four different ways?
Yeah, exactly. Why is learning development so important, especially in today's world?
Oh man, growth.
Yeah.
It's the crux of everything that we do as humans. We're almost designed to be growing, and at any point in time, if learning stagnates, it's a hard hill to get over if it just stops completely. And in today's age, I think it's a beautiful thing to be curious in relation to the work that you do because you can find a greater depth. But also, and this is the pro tip for one of the pro tips from the episode is being curious about other things outside. And I've been seeing that the more I experience life outside of business, the more I can be inspired to implement into my business. I know there's the classic Phil Knight example of him climbing Mount Fuji and getting the idea for Nike. I think those sort of experiences and curiosities play more into how we show up as leaders in our business than we may give credit to.
It's so true. And you think about somebody who's grinding like 12, 16-hour days and over and over and over again. I personally have been thinking about this a lot because
Mhm.
everyone knows I do a lot of things, but I will say it's the moments away. It's the traveling to see a different experience or meet a new person that, or go out, exercise or do something different that ignites the brain and it lights up the brain. And then you're like, ooh, and it's those quiet moments. I actually had someone ask me this recently. This is a true story. I was telling someone about all the things I was doing, and she asked me, she said, "When do you have like quiet thinking time?" And I like laughed because I thought she was joking, but she was like actually really seriously asking me this because as an introvert for her, she needs like hours. Like she spends
Mhm.
hours a day thinking, like quiet thinking. And I laughed because I have business, I have small children, I have a lot on my plate. And I was like, quiet thinking time. What a
Yeah.
revolutionary concept, right? But it is sometimes in those quiet moments and taking that new lens and different place that you're gonna find something different, some different way of looking at it.
I resonate with that completely, especially the making space for it. I also struggle with making space for this, even though I know I just said it. When I volunteered at Vid Summit back in 2018. This is going to be, wow, this is already getting nostalgic. And I think this
Oh, a
was
whole 2018 ago.
8 years.
I know it's crazy.
Uh, I think this might have been the first year. I think Mr. Beast bought that conference or something like that. But I remember him saying this, and who knows if this is still his philosophy today, but I remember him saying the most important thing that he does in his day is spend time to think. And I thought that was really surprising because I mean, regardless of our opinions of him in general, it's just he's built something really large. And to have that be such a
At a very
focal
young
point
age, too, from my understanding.
very young
Yeah.
age. But you can also kind of reverse engineer some of what he's done to see a lot of his ideas are extremely creative. And he would say that he would come up with hundreds and hundreds of ideas just by spending time thinking and like doing other things so then he can make something really great. And I think being a great thinker is a great thing. So maybe you and I should commit to making more
We'll
time.
practice it. We'll work on it. It's
Pro tip
something
to
to work
myself.
on for sure, is making space for it. And it's definitely helpful for everyone, but I feel like, we are the preachers of the things that we need to learn
Yes.
too, right?
Yeah.
So it's good that you brought that up because it's like this is what I'm working on right now.
hmm
I love
hmm
it. What do you wish companies knew or did differently as it relates to learning and development? So, like the clients that you work with, do you guide them on it all? Like, does that impact your work? Like, how would you advise them?
This is a great question. I would say that most of the times when I work with folks and something doesn't stick, it's because there's a mentality of wanting to stay in what's comfortable, or they claim something as their zone of genius, but it's actually just a refusal to learn the next skill they need to grow. For example, there's a lot of folks that have some hesitancy around selling or like taking sales calls and things like that, and they will refuse to do it. But it is usually a lot of times talking to their prospects and customers is the only thing that is going to help their business grow over time. And whether I provide them with templates or, handhold one-on-one, something like this, it's not really up to me for them to do the implementation. Like if there's resistance there, that's ultimately part of the issue. So I would say, if I could say that more concisely, I think what I would want small business owners specifically to do differently is to recognize when they are putting distance between what they need to do for the sake of something that is noble, but it's not real. It's not a real reason.
Like an excuse that they're using to chicken out a little bit of the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend who was a business coach. I think that's what he calls himself. And we were joking about it, and he said, most of the time, honestly, I'm just a therapist because I'm going in as a business, or maybe he called himself business analyst. He went in as a business analyst, like to fix the numbers, right? To fix the business.
Yeah.
But most of the time, what really needed to happen was like therapy for the
Yeah.
owner or the decision makers or the leaders. And I find that even in my world in learning development, so often I'm brought in by an executive team saying we're doing this big change initiative and how do we get all these people on board? And a lot of time it hasn't been thoughtfully planned. Well, that's the nicest way I can say that. And that you have to pressure test kind of people's assumptions
Mm.
before
Mhm.
you can really get to what the right action is, right? So it's kind of like the mindset work before the action.
Yeah.
Because we can always find excuses, we can always find reasons
Yeah.
why not to do XYZ, especially if it's a hard thing, right? To avoid. But it's in the doing, I think, that we learn. And I think that so many people have said, oh, how do you have confidence to do this? Or how can you gain confidence? Like you can't until you do it. That's
Mhm.
the trick. You have to be bad before you can be good. That's the answer in the world. But no
Mhm.
one likes that answer. They want the shortcut answer.
Yeah, it's the unfortunate truth. I will also say, I wonder, I would be curious your opinion on this too. I almost think that it makes sense that there's a therapy mindset portion of it because business owners, I'm speaking in generalities. Business can be a lonely endeavor. And if the person at the top is constantly responsible for making decisions for others or like putting things in place, there's really no accountability up there. So when somebody comes in and they finally have somebody to unload all of their problems or like, things onto, I kind of think that makes logical sense. Whether that's the right thing to be happening, I can see maybe why it's happening. Do you see some of that?
Yeah, and going back to kind of your Mr. Beast mode, not to call it Mr. Beast, but like
Mhm.
if you look at like some of the most successful entrepreneurs, the most successful business owners, even like Fortune 500 clients like I deal, because I deal more in the corporate space, some of the most successful people, they make time, like we talked, they make space for the thinking time. They lock themselves in a room. Like some of the best writers, like even Seinfeld talks about this, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
comedians and writers and creative types, they need that, they force themselves into that tough space where there's no escape from it because they know how easy it is, especially in today's world, to escape the hard thing or the painful thing. And I think that it's so true what you said about like the business owner and the entrepreneur especially. You can be working kind of in a bubble sometimes. And
Mhm.
and so it is that if you're not growing, if you're not learning as the owner or as the entrepreneur or as a leader in general, if you're a manager or leader listening to this, if you're, and I've probably said this before on a different episode, but if you're not showing your team that you do it too, like you have to walk your talk. So you
Mhm.
can't expect them to learn everything if you're not willing to roll up your sleeves and do it and set the example of that continuous improvement mindset, that continuous learning, facing the scary stuff, facing the challenges. And I mean, this is me. I'm a strong believer in walking my talk personally, but I will say I made a video a couple of days ago, actually, from the time of this recording, about the fact that I was procrastinating something
Yeah.
that I'm usually the person who like ignites people and energizes people to action, and yet I had been procrastinating for a while on something, but I finally did it. So I'm very excited to say. But it's all of us, and I think it's universally human. But
Yeah.
the people that are the most successful, people, leaders, whatever you want to call them, that are most successful are the ones that not only make the space for the thinking and the hard space, but they actively seek out therapy, coaching,
Mm.
like experts, right? Like additional experts to up their game. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that mentorship might not be the right word here, but outside counsel that is unbiased with relevant experience or information is one of the single greatest things I've ever been able to have access to or like resources, even if it was paid
Yeah.
to be able to say like, no, you're missing the point on this, or to
Because when it's
your
right in your face, you can't see it sometimes. And it
can't
sounds
see.
so obvious, when someone else is looking in, it's like, oh, well, clearly. But it's hard to see when you're in it.
Yeah, it's hard to see ourselves. I've actually been talking about this a lot about how maybe I shouldn't say talking about it a lot. This has come up in a couple conversations. Um, Solomon, he wrote the book of Proverbs, incredibly wise, didn't always make the wisest choices. And I think I certainly resonate with that experience of everything that we're mentioning here of like even doing the doings but not being able to do it for yourself is I don't know. So I don't know if this is just the through line of like accountability and advice from experts is good, but that might be it.
Yeah, no, I love it. One of the things I always love, we're an audience of doers, so that takes me perfectly to, I always like to leave people with one actionable tip or takeaway. I'm sure they got a lot from this. I hope they got a lot from this that they can apply today, to take today to do so that tomorrow can be better. What have you got for us today?
I would say that this is going to be on the personal side. Whether you believe in God or don't believe in God, I would crack open the Bible. There's tons of good wisdom in there. And even if you just take a look at the book of Matthew, and read Jesus's words and how he lived and try to emulate it, it is like night and day the type of joy you'll have in your life. This is something I'm experiencing more recently and just understanding boundaries, which is great for business owners of what makes sense to say yes to, what makes sense to say no to. That would be the first thing that's probably a bit personal and business side. I think the other side of the coin that I would want folks to dig into would be truly defining what you want. We were just talking about how quickly time passes, and every time I sit with that reality, the question comes up is like, am I living the life that I want to? And am I actually pursuing goals that mean something to me or like have some sense of value and worth that I would say if I did this, I would be successful, or not to say I'm not, don't have success now, but making sure that the track is clear because it's easy, as you're mentioning, the distractions are rampant, running rampant right now with there's so many things that we could be focusing on. So just being really dialed on what it is that we want, I think makes tomorrow easier and better.
Yeah, and it's one of the hardest things to, I forget what movie they talk about this, but they had a really good one. Someone went to the therapist and said like for the first time ever and said like why do people go to therapy? And the therapist, I think it was like Tony Shalhoub, so I've got to think of, but I he said like the most amazing answer. He's like basically in general, she's like, give me advice in general that would work, that applies to every human. And it's like, figure out what you want,
Mm-hmm.
learn how to ask for it, and go for it. And
Mm.
and she was like, yeah, that sounds really good. That sounds really hard. It's like, yeah, those things, it sounds so simple, but simple is not easy, right? And I think so often people think they know what they want, but they really don't. They don't understand the deeper why. Why do they want this thing? And what do they think they're going to accomplish by gaining this thing? So if you can get really clear on the what, the how is so much easier. But it's that defining the what that needs to happen first so that you can get to the how.
Yeah, completely agree. And the other benefit of doing something like this is it will help reduce, ideally, the comparison thief that steals from us. Now you're not comparing yourself to everyone you see on Instagram or everyone that you come into contact with. It's like that person's living a life that I don't even want. So I'm okay to say that I'm happy for them, or I can just continue to pursue the things that I actually want as opposed to thinking that I want someone else's life and continuing to make this long laundry list of things that don't really mean something to me.
I'm personally really lucky. I didn't know how lucky I was about this, but I've kind of always had that mindset because I grew up as an athlete, like from day one.
Nice.
I say from day one. Literally, my mom rode horses up until 2 weeks before she gave birth to me. I was in the hospital, from the hospital to the barn. I didn't go to the house. I went to the barn first at 2 days old. I was on my first horse when I was 3 weeks old. I could trot on a horse before I could walk as a
Wow.
human. So when I say like I literally from day one was raised in that athlete mindset, but for me it was never about the competition. It was always about did I do better today than I did yesterday than I did the week before? Because if you can focus on you and focus on how do you get 1% better, one step forward every single day, I mean, it compounds. It's just, it's amazing how much, and I didn't realize how fortunate I was until I learned this comparison thing that most people have. I wasn't really raised with that. I mean, I was
Right.
raised to win, I was raised with sports, but it was always, whether I won or I lost, it was more about my individual performance than it was about the external factors. And so that's very fortunate. And so I'm lucky to have that mindset.
Heck yeah. You also touched on something so great, the compound portion of it. I think is underrated. Like being focused on something particular, as you're mentioning, or even building, having you be the baseline that you compare yourself against, the inputs that you take, if they're directional and they're for you, you get to reap the benefits of the compound growth of staying focused on the thing that you want, as opposed to jumping around and chasing the next new thing. That's so good. And I'm very happy to hear that. You didn't grow with the comparison. That's like such a cheat code to not have.
I know, and I can't even take really credit for it because I kind of didn't realize it was a thing until when you grow up in a household and you don't realize your household is weird until you see other people's households. It's kind of like that with mindset. I've been studying how people work and tick for 2 decades now with 2 degrees in psychology, and I didn't realize how special that was that I had that kind of way of being until I realized that most people don't look at life that way. I was like, wait, you don't all look like this, like at yourself, and you look at others like you can't control others. You can only control your own inputs and outputs. So, but no, I love it. Thank you so much for being with us today. This was so much fun.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
And with that, we'll begin to wrap up. So, I hope this discussion gave our audience a few new perspectives, sparked some ideas, and left you with at least one takeaway you can put into action immediately. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and join us every Tuesday as we continue exploring learning, leadership, and what it takes to help people and organizations grow. And if today's conversation resonated with you, or if you'd like to join me for a future episode, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and let's talk again on Tuesday. Thanks, everyone.